Hi guys, and welcome to the Bookmas vlog where I'll be recommending a bunch of books to you from every single genre so you can add them to your Christmas and winter TBR because these are perfect to be read during this season specifically, which is why let's just directly get into it because I have so many planned out and it's gonna be so fun. So now the way I have it planned out is we'll have a Christmas portion of the video specifically, and then right after that we'll have a bunch of winter recommendations for the people who don't want to read like Christmas specific books, but at the same time you want something that's set during the winter time so you can still enjoy it as the season is going around, because I do know a bunch of people who don't necessarily want like Christmas thrown in their face, because a few of these definitely are that way, which is why I have winter book recs coming in too. So there's something for everybody, there's something from every genre, so you can definitely pick and choose what you want to add to your TBR this season or whatever. And let's just start because it's gonna be a long one. I have so many picked out in front of me and they're all such amazing books that it's gonna be an incredible season if you read them regardless, which is why here we are. Let's start with our first book under the Christmas section. This is called Faking It Under the Mistletoe. I read it a couple years ago and already I'm planning a reread this year because I feel like the concept is so fun. We follow Olivia. She kind of works as this like intern at this huge firm and she's like the embodiment of Christmas. So this is what I mean when I say these books are so full of Christmas cheer and joy, and maybe that might not be for you, which it's fine. These are overtly Christmas books. They kind of throw it in your face. So if that isn't for you, you can move on from this section of the video. But this book specifically, she is obsessed with everything Christmas. That's like her favorite time of the year, and she volunteers to do all sorts of Christmas activities, which is why no one is surprised or whatever when at the office she's been given in charge to like handle every single like Christmas related decision. So she's planning activities, she's doing a bunch of things, and so it's no surprise that you find her at the tree lighting where all the other employees are, except as it turns out her boss Asher is over there as well, and his ex-girlfriend is there with her new partner, I believe. And so she actually feels bad for Asher the boss, and she figures what's a good little bit of Christmas cheer, good Christmas fun, and she ends up kissing him to kind of make his ex jealous. Except he never wanted that in the first place, but now that she has started the charade, they have to keep it up and they have to fake date so that no one else suspects anything and like doesn't make like a big bunch out of that one kiss or whatever. And as all of this is happening, they're both starting to fall for each other, except he is like her complete opposite because he just does not like Christmas. He's a grump, and so you kind of get to watch them like hang out together, their dynamic, and her kind of being the sunshine in the relationship, and then his grumpiness kind of becoming sweeter when he's like around her, and them kind of changing that dynamic. And I thought it was sweet, I thought it was fun. This book specifically, again, it takes place during Christmas time, so it's perfect, but also it's like the funniest book I think I've ever read because I remember reading it in the span of like one day. And I kid you not, I was laughing about 75% of the time that I was reading this because it was so good and so bingeable, and it just flew by in such a whirlwind because I was obsessed with the romance. It was so swoony. I was obsessed with how hilarious it was because no book has made me laugh the way this one did. I was obsessed with the comedy and the characters. It's just, if you want to read this, there are deeper moments and you should definitely check trigger warnings for that, because I probably should not have started this video off with this one because it is a heavier book and you do need to be aware going into it. But apart from that, I feel like the fun bits are really fun in this, and here we are. I had a really good time reading this when I did, and so it's gonna be reread time soon in a couple weeks or so this year when I get around to it because I'm so excited. I've literally been waiting the entire year to get to this. Now our next book is called Holidaze by Christina. I feel like this is like a classic book everywhere. Everywhere you go on the internet, this is a Christmas classic because essentially everyone speaks about it, everyone loves it, and for good reason. This follows Maise. She doesn't really have the best life situation at the moment because her family and two other families have this like yearly tradition ever since she was born to kind of meet up for like the holiday season at this like cabin in Utah, and so they kind of go there. And at the moment already her life is in shambles because she doesn't really like her job, she's not earning a lot, she lives with her parents, and you know, a bunch of other things are going down. But as she gets to the cabin, she's hoping that okay, the season at least will be the time that actually saves the entire year for her because she loves December, she loves Christmas. Except when she actually gets to the cabin, she finds out that this is going to be their last trip there because the cabin is being sold. And then not just that, she kind of messes up because there are two brothers that come from the other family, her parents' friends, and so these brothers, she likes one of them, I think his name was Andrew, but she actually kisses the other one, and so she kind of messed up because Andrew saw the entire thing and now she's botched her chances with Andrew to begin with. I don't know why this is reminding me of Belly from Summer I Turned Pretty, but it's nothing like that or whatever. And then not just that, she's not sure when she'll see these people ever again, and she's just depressed and done with Christmas. She's ready to get back home, and on the way there, as they're driving away in the car or whatever, she just thinks can the universe please just fix it? And then guess what happens? I do believe it was like a truck carrying Christmas trees or something like that. They ram into the car, everyone in there dies, and then Malin wakes up and she's on a plane heading to Utah again. So as it turns out, every time she makes some sort of mistake, she's on a plane on the way back to Utah to kind of repeat this trip, except she has to do something to change that repetition, because it's kind of like the Groundhog Day trope, wherein she has to go back and change something so she can fix her life and fix it with the chances the universe is getting her to make it better. Except every time something happens and every time she's getting close to figuring it out, she ends up dying and repeating, and suddenly she just doesn't know how to go about it. So she figures out, okay, since I have like unlimited chances, I'll just do whatever, and then it goes that way. It's a really fun book. I love the fact that it's Groundhog's Day set in like Christmas time, because you don't get books like that, and you don't get good books like that, and I feel like this one carried it out so well, because the other like Groundhog's Day tropes I've read, they have to be really, really good for me to actually mention them, because while I do enjoy them, I feel like sometimes they're a little repetitive, and this is nothing like it, because it's funny, we have found family, the romance is so good, and I feel like the whole situation is so fun to read about, because you're like rooting for her from the very beginning, and I feel like it was a really fun book to go along with. Next up on the TBR, we have The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. I just got my copy in the mail, and again, planning a reread already. Even with the previous book, I'm planning rereads of all of these because I feel like they're perfect for this time of the year. This one specifically is written by Ali Carter, and if you've already heard of her, she kind of like these like spy romance books almost, and this is kind of like it, because you follow Maggie and Ethan. Those are the names I just confirmed, and it's correct. They're kind of like rival authors, so she writes cozy mystery or whatever, and he writes like high stakes mystery, and they're okay with it or whatever. They haven't really ever gotten along, and they're just fine about that. They're kind of like rivals or whatever, except both of them get this like cryptic almost invite to kind of go fly out to the UK to this like huge mansion or whatever and spend their Christmas there, and they both end up accepting for their own reasons or whatever, except when they turn up there, they find out that it's this really popular author of like thrillers and stuff. She's like the biggest mystery name out there in every household, and so they figure, okay, this is gonna be like the perfect opportunity to get close to her. She's called Eleanor Ashley, by the way, and to kind of maybe figure out how to like maybe collaborate with her and further their own like chances in their own work and stuff. Except as it turns out, the next day they wake up, they get ready for whatever she's got in store, and she just disappears. So now they have to really just figure out and team up together to see where she ended up and who else from the household may have had like a motive in harming her or whatever, because like there's a bunch of like suspicious people out there, especially in the house, and then there's like immense snow outside, so there's like no signals, no one can get out, nothing. Someone starts shooting from the outside, so it's like high stakes. You're trying to figure out who is doing what's going down, and this is that book. It's so sweet and it's so fun, and I feel like Ethan, I have mentioned it multiple times on this channel, but genuinely one day I hope the guy I marry is like him, because he's like perfect husband material. He's so sweet, he is so perfect. When you actually figure out the reason as to why he never calls her real name and stuff, I'm sorry, it's so sweet to me, and I feel like this entire book was just like the perfect like Christmas hug in the form of a book, and you have to read it this year if you haven't already, because it's perfect. You have to. Next up is another book I don't have a physical copy of. I read it a couple years ago, but it kind of stuck with me over the years. This isn't necessarily romance like the last 3 rom-coms I spoke about, but it is like, I would say, women's fiction or whatever. It's called The Book Club Hotel. Essentially, it follows these 3 friends who every single year they have this like trip they plan in the summertime or whatever to take together and just like hang out, have a good time, and kind of conduct book club wherein they're all like discussing the book they read and whatnot. Except because of some like complications that arrive in their schedules, they don't really have the time during the summer, which is why they figure they'll postpone it to like Christmas time, December or whatever, and they end up going to this place called the Maple Sugar Inn, which is like in this small town. It's like this cute little inn or whatever by itself or whatever, supposed to be a really peaceful place, except it's kind of out of the blue for them because it's not like the place they typically go to, and so you're trying to figure out why they ended up there specifically and what one of the women from the group, her connection is to the single mother who's actually running the inn. And in the midst of everything, I feel like this book specifically is again so sweet and wholesome and heartwarming, and if you want a book about girlhood, this is it for you, because I feel like every female relationship in this book was portrayed so well and so beautifully, and I loved every second because it was so sweet. This also made me want to start a book club as soon as I finished, and I feel like that's just going to be a side effect if you read it, so it's kind of perfect and it's definitely amazing for this time of the year if you want to pick it up, so you have to. Lastly, for our Christmas books, I have yet another Christmas classic. Do not come after me, but it's The Christmas Carol. I just have to mention it every time because the first time I reread this, I think after a bunch of years, last year at the beginning of the year. I sobbed like a baby. We all know what this is about because it's like a household name, but if you don't, it kind of follows this man called Scrooge. You've got to have heard that name at this point, but essentially he's like the kind of miser who only saves his money up for himself, and he's like horrible to everyone else, and he's just mean and miserable. One day though, he kind of sees the spirit of his like business partner who died about 10 years ago called Marley, and he actually sees like a bunch of locks around this man's body, and the man tells him that once you die, all your like sins kind of form in the form of locks, and Scrooge has more on his body than Marley. Marley can see it because he's dead, but Scrooge cannot. So he kind of needs to atone for the fact that he's not a good person. He kind of needs to start becoming a better person or whatever. So Marley is going to send like 3 different ghosts of Christmas past, present and future, to kind of show Scrooge what would happen if he wouldn't like atone and change or whatever. So like past stuff that's already happened that kind of made him the way he is, what's going down in the present and what people kind of say about him, and what might happen in the future after he's very well dead and gone and stuff. And so it kind of opens his eyes and shows him like Christmas spirit and changes him as a person. And I feel like this, come on, it's like a Christmas rite of passage where this is like the book, and it's hardly there, alright? It's so tiny. It brings in Christmas spirit. It kind of reminds you of the essence of it, and I feel like this is perfect because this book is just so sweet and so wholesome and heartwarming again once you get the message. Because again, this is such a good book, and I keep saying that for every book so far, but it is, and you have to pick it up this season if you haven't already. And if you have, take this as your sign to reread, because again, there's nothing like reading this during Christmas time and having the best time ever. Now, moving on to our winter book recommendations, because these, they kind of take place, or they remind me of like a wintry, December-y vibe. So you can read them throughout the month of December or whatever, or while it's cold outside, but they aren't like overtly throwing Christmas in your face. It's maybe mentioned, and it might not even be mentioned to begin with. So I feel like these are perfect for someone who doesn't want to read like these overtly Christmas like rom-com books, because I feel like sometimes in those, like the girl, she is literally Christmas incarnate. The town is made for Christmas. The only thing they think about is Christmas, and I feel like sometimes they can be a little too much. And so if you don't want to be slumped out by reading those kind of books back to back, because that definitely happens at some point when you've consumed too many, I feel like these are perfect to still read during winter time to kind of get the wintry vibe, but at the same time have a good time, because their plot definitely varies, and you know, it's not fully Christmas, but it definitely gives holiday season vibes or whatever, if that makes sense. There's snow outside and it's cold and you just want to snuggle up and get warm, and this kind of reminds you of that. So the first book I have under winter romances is this one. It's called The Love of My Afterlife. I read it a few weeks ago and gave it 5 stars, and I only just got my copy in the mail yesterday. Basically, we follow this girl called Delphi. She gets back home from this like hectic day of work, and all she wants to do is eat her burger in peace, except as it turns out, she starts to choke on it and she dies. End of story. Except as it turns out, all of that happens in chapter 1, and she's dead, but she opens her eyes because someone's asking her to wake up, and that someone introduces herself as one of the therapists in heaven to kind of help Delphi process the fact that she's dead and kind of help her move on to the afterlife. Except that therapist is also busy because she's like short-staffed at the moment, so she kind of goes off to do her own like work or whatever. And as Delphi is waiting in this waiting room to kind of figure out what's happened to her life to begin with, there's this other man who dies and also comes and sits next to her. They have a conversation. He's called Jonah, and he's like the perfect man out there. He's like literally her soulmate, because they're like talking and she feels this like instant connection and spark with him, and she thinks maybe the afterlife won't be so bad after all. Except the therapist comes back out and she's like, oh my god, why are you here? And as it turns out, Jonah isn't actually dead. He was just at the dentist and the drug kind of knocked him out, so he's not actually supposed to be there, and the therapist sends him back. So now Delphi is stuck in the afterlife with no prospects whatsoever. The one man she thought was meant for her was actually alive, and he's gone back to Earth, and she's still dead, and so nothing's gonna come of it. Except the therapist lady, I think her name was Merritt, is actually a huge sucker for romance. She at some point mentions like reading Emily Henry and listening to Niall Horan, so we all know she's our kind of girl, but essentially she kind of sees Delphi kind of low down or whatever, and she's just like, okay, for my own amusement purposes and for you to kind of find your soulmate, because she has this theory wherein you have 5 soulmates in the world or whatever, and Delphi found one of them. She's gonna send Delphi back for 10 days, and if Delphi can get a kiss from Jonah of his own volition, she's gonna let her take her life back and continue living on Earth. And so Delphi is sent back on this like crazy mad chase because she doesn't know Jonah's last name, and she's supposed to look for this one man in a city of millions, London, figure out where he is, figure out how to get him to fall in love with her and get a kiss, because he doesn't remember anything, his memories were wiped. And in the midst of everything, her countdown clock is running out, 10 days, and so she's living life in the sense that there's only 10 days left. what worse could it get or whatever, and she's just putting herself in these situations when she goes F that, and she just does whatever she wants to regardless of consequences, and suddenly she's living her life in a way she's never lived before, except there's like a countdown clock and everything. She doesn't want to die, but she cannot find the man in the first place, and she doesn't know how to go about it, and so she's enlisting people's help. She's kind of doing all these crazy things she wouldn't normally, and I feel like this is perfect because you kind of watch this woman get the spark back in her life, except is it temporary because it's only 10 days, and then how much worse can it get because she has to go die back anyway, and so that's the story. I feel like if you've ever watched a 2000s rom-com, this definitely gives the premise, and I feel like her specifically running around London, I don't know why, in my head, and especially because of the fact that I read it now during cold season, reminds me of winter. I think there was like snow mentioned at some point as well, so I feel like this is the perfect book to read this Christmas season because it definitely gives rom-com-y vibes, but it's not overtly Christmas, and it's not like throwing Christmas in your face. It's like sweet enough and get you wholesome for the season, so it was perfect. I had the best time reading it, and once you actually get to the romance in this book, it's unmatched, it's so funny, and it's so swoony, and it's so sweet, and there's truly nothing like it. And if you've got recs similar to this one specifically, even though I know it's a recs video, I'm supposed to be giving the recs, please leave them in the comments because I've been searching for a book like this to no avail since the day I finished, because I feel like I've just literally been stuck there. I haven't been able to move on. It was that good. Now, this is like a classic for me on this channel if you've been here for a while, but this is You Deserve Each Other. I read this a couple years ago and had like an okay time, but then this summer I wanted to like reread, so I reread, and suddenly this is like, I think, a 6-star top tier god tier romance for me. This is easily in my top 3 ever, and everyone knows that I only read romance all the time, which is why that's saying a lot. This one specifically though, it is set around December time, and the girl in it, she is making Christmas plans in her head because that's her favorite season. There isn't anything overtly Christmas that happens anyway, which is why I feel like it's a winter book, but essentially it follows Naomi and Nicholas. They're the perfect couple from the outside, except as it turns out there's internal cracks and stuff because their relationship is falling apart. It's on the rocks, except they're set to like marry each other in a few months, and now they don't know what to do, and so they're pulling all these like pranks on each other or whatever, so the other calls off the wedding and has to incur all the expenses because they don't want to get married to each other. They hate each other at the moment, but at the same time they don't want to bear the bill of the expense because it's like pricey and stuff, and so you watch them kind of pranking around, messing with each other, except as they're doing that, they're falling back in love and trying to understand where the relationship goes from there. And I feel like it's so sweet, it's so heartwarming. There's no book out there like this, and I feel like any time of the year, if you offer me a second chance romance, I will eat it up because I feel like my favorite tropes ever are friends to lovers, childhood friends to lovers, and second chance, maybe even marriage of convenience if it's done well. And I feel like this definitely plays into the second chance obsession I've had for little years at this point, and it's perfect to me. So please pick it up this season if you haven't already, because if you want a good book that's done well, this is it for you. It's gonna be so funny, again, because Naomi, she's like the most hilarious person I've ever read about, but it's also so sweet once they start finding their way back to each other, because I feel like I've never specifically read about a relationship that's on the rocks but they have to pretend for the others, and on the inside it's kind of broken, and the way this was handled was done so well. It's so good and it's perfect for this season. Now moving on, I have this book called Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Again, I read this year, and it isn't exactly wintry Christmas vibes, but at the beginning her car is stuck in this ditch, and I feel like that whole atmosphere and surrounding, for some reason in my head, anytime some character is stuck outside, that gives me the kind of vibe of it being cold out there, and suddenly boom, I pop in winter in there. But essentially this one follows Alexis. She's like this like high-powered doctor. She's working in this like big city, happy by herself, except one day when she's driving back from a funeral, like I said, her car gets stuck in a ditch, and there's this man who comes and helps her out, and she has this like instant connection with him. He's Daniel. He's like a small town carpenter or whatever. They've got like quite the age gap where she's older. Nothing's gonna come of it, except as they start to spend more time, they start to fall in love with each other, and suddenly you don't really know what they can do to kind of figure out their relationship because they want to be together. It's just the circumstances that are not letting them, because she cannot leave her big city life or whatever, the doctor job she's got, and he cannot leave his small town, and how they're gonna make it work. And I feel like this entire book is so sweet. This was the first Abby book I read, and believe me when I say it won't be the last, because this was probably one of the best books again that I've ever read. It's funny, it's sweet. I feel like the romance in this is done so well, because there's these moments wherein you don't know if you can believe in them as a couple going into it, especially with the premise or whatever, but as you go along with it, by the very end I was bawling my eyes out. it's a fun romance, and I was crying just because I wanted them to be together. And here we are. It was a great book overall, and the way she makes you truly believe in this couple, like, I in my head definitely think that these two are real and they are made for each other since like heaven or whatever. So here we are. Definition of soulmates is this book, and it's perfect for this season because I feel like you could always use a little bit of romance any time of the year, and this would deliver on that. Now next up, I have this book called Begin Again, and I know the cover screams fall, but the girl in this, she does like a bunch of outdoor activities which kind of remind me of like a wintry vibe. There's also a scene wherein there's like a bunch of snow that slides off this tree and it's about to fall on her, and the guy like kind of pushes her out of the way, and so again in my head that equates to winter. But this book specifically follows Andy. She gets this like spot in the community college, but she transfers to this like bigger college and like a more prestigious one or whatever because her boyfriend is there and because she has better prospects there. And so she decides she's gonna go there, kind of live her dreams out, because her mom used to go to the same place and her mom has passed away at this point, so she kind of wants to connect with her mother. Except as it turns out, her boyfriend actually transferred to the community college to kind of go there for her, and suddenly it's kind of messed up because he's gone there, she ended up here, and so she's trying to make the best of the situation before she can transfer back to be with him. So in the midst of everything, she's participating in these like extracurricular activities that involve her kind of running around, participating in secret society events and stuff to kind of win these medals so she can actually get permanent acceptance there like her mom did. And you know, she's running this podcast behind the scenes and she's hanging out with all these fun people and like having the best time ever, but there's like a clock on it and there's like other things going down, and so you're trying to wonder where it'll go from there. She's also hanging out with her RA, I believe. He's called Milo, and he's like the best guy ever because he also cannot survive without coffee and he's grumpy without his morning coffee, and I think he works in this like bagel place, so he's sweet, he's really funny when he's grumpy, and I feel like the way the two of them hang out, the friendship starts to evolve from something to something else and you start to see the love there, but you don't know where it'll go. It's a really sweet book. I loved going along with it. This is like one of the only YA books that I've ever read that's actually connected with me, because going back, I always, you know, go back and just like flip through the book, kind of look back on certain scenes, and I can't wait to go and reread this because I feel like this is, again, such a perfect romance book. And like in my head, all of these books are perfect, but this one specifically, I had the best time reading it ever, and it kind of saved me from this like horrible slump because the book I read before this was also a 5-star, but it kind of broke me because it was really emotional and sad and heavy. And this is perfect if you want to feel happy, because I feel like a bunch of emotions are explored in this, done really well, and this is again the epitome of romance for me. Now moving on, I have another romance book which is also by Ali Carter. I didn't mention it in the Christmas books because it's not a Christmas book, it's more like a spy book, but because they're running around and because there's definitely snow in this, in my head it's winter. Essentially this book is called The Blonde Identity. You follow this girl who wakes up in the middle of Paris. She doesn't recognize why she's there, she doesn't recognize where she's at, she doesn't even know her own name because all her memories are gone, and there's this man standing above her, a gun pointed at her head, and he tells her to run because as it turns out, she apparently is this really crazy spy called Alex who kind of has this like information that the bad guys want, the good guys want as well, and she kind of went out into the cold and suddenly everyone's after her to kind of locate her and get that valuable information out of her and, you know, track her down, because suddenly we don't really know if she's a good person or not, except as it turns out, this girl is not actually Alex the spy. She is Alex the spy's twin sister Zoe, who is not a spy, who does not know where the information's at, who does not know what will go down. All she knows is that there's bad guys after her, there's also good guys after her, and she doesn't know what to do because she's out of the loop, she doesn't have her memories and stuff, and so Alex's ex-colleague kind of helps her running about trying to escape all these like bad people but still figure out what's actually going down. And I feel like it's such a fun book because all the running about, going out in the wild, again, in my head, that equates to being outside in the cold, and there are definitely scenes like that. So Christmas, but it's sweet because you can actually see the romance here and you can see the fun spy mystery stuff and kind of see where it goes, because she is not a spy but she's expected to now escape all these people who think she's a spy because she has the same face as her twin, and so there's a bunch of things going down and you only have to read this book to understand what I'm speaking about, but it's so sweet. It's like a palate cleanser, but it's done so well, and I feel like, again, have to go reread because it's so good. Now moving on to my favorite romance book of all time. This one's called Marriage for One. The only reason I like Marriage of Convenience is because of this book, and it's definitely set during winter time, so it's perfect for this time of the year. Essentially, it follows this girl called Rose. Her uncle dies and he kind of leaves her this place on Madison Avenue where she's always dreamed of kind of starting her own coffee shop, except as it turns out, the clause requires it to go in the possession of her husband. except she's not married and her boyfriend just broke up with her. So she doesn't know what to do. The uncle's children are going to fight her for it, and she's already invested her life savings into that coffee shop, so she can't really give it up. And so in comes in the uncle's lawyer. He kind of offers to marry her, so he'll be the husband who the coffee shop kind of falls into in terms of ownership and stuff, and he'll let her have the place and run it. And in exchange, she'll kind of attend business meetings with him because he's like the youngest, I think, partner at his law firm, so no one really takes him seriously, and he just wants to look like a family man and like he has roots and stuff. And so they kind of start this arrangement, except they're starting to fall for each other, and it's so sweet. And this is the best romance book I've read in my life because it's slow burn. It's definitely a thicker one to get through, but once you get the scenes, it's like every love language combined into one. And Jack is my idea of a perfect man because I think of this book every single day, and I don't know why I haven't reread it, but I will soon because it's perfect to me. And listen, you cannot go wrong with this one. You literally cannot. Now moving on to the last stack of romances I have here. First off is The Do-Over. This is kind of like that book we were speaking about earlier in a Holidaze, because it also takes place in the Groundhog's Day trope, but it's actually set during Valentine's. But because at the beginning of the book, this girl, she keeps crashing her car. It's literally on the cover. And it takes place in the snow. In my head, you can also read this during winter time because again, it's like a fun romance, and we can always use a little bit of extra love during the holiday season, extra wholesomeness, and I feel like this is definitely it. It is also a YA book, and it's Lynn Painter, so you again absolutely cannot go wrong with her. But essentially this book follows Emily, who is a hopeless romantic ready to start her Valentine's Day off strong and happy, except it turns out to be the worst day ever because her boyfriend is caught cheating on her. Her dad is moving across state for his job or whatever. Now she has to decide whether she wants to stay with him or her mom or whatever because they're separated. And then not just that, she crashes her car, and there's like a bunch of other things that go down, and suddenly it's like the worst Valentine's of her life. And so she just goes to bed that night, is happy it's all over, and in her head she's just like, oh my god, I can't wait for February the 15th so I can like honestly just be done with this horrible day. Except the next day she wakes up and it's still Feb the 14th, and she just keeps repeating that day until she starts changing things up and kind of living on her own terms, because even though the day went horribly, that doesn't mean she has to take it in or whatever. She can still go with it in stride. She can still live life on her own terms and be happy, and I feel like this book definitely explores that. And it also kind of explores this like romance between her and Nick Stark, who is like the best guy ever. So I feel like this was sweet again. This is again one of the best books I've ever read, and you have to pick it up because it's so sweet, it's so cute, because it's YA. Any age can literally read it, and I feel like the jokes in this and the Taylor Swift references, I lived for them. So this is also perfect to be reading this time of the year. Now moving on, we have another book from Abby Jimenez. This is called Say You'll Remember Me. This definitely has more of like a summer cover or whatever, but I feel like it's perfect for this time of the year, because in this book at this one point, I know I keep saying it for every single book why I'm justifying it to be part of this video, but this one specifically because changing seasons and snow is mentioned at some point, which is why here we are. This follows Xavier and Samantha. They kind of fall into this like off the chance meeting, and you know, things get kicked off because right off the bat they have this like instant chemistry and stuff, and so they go out on the one perfect date they could ever have. Except as it turns out, the next day Samantha's flying back to her hometown and stuff to kind of look after her mom, and that's on the other side of the entire country, so she can never see him again or whatever, because it was just one date, and now her mom is more important because she's got like Alzheimer's. So she's going back home, except Xavier cannot forget her. She cannot forget him. And so they start this like long distance relationship. And I feel like this one, again, you go with the ups and downs of them together, trying to figure out if they can be together, because they're clearly in love. These two people deserve to be together. But again, it's the circumstances that are kind of stopping them from doing so. And I feel like, again, the way Abby Jimenez does her books, I feel like they're emotionally mature and like adult, in a sense that the characters are not pulling like stupid miscommunication, they're working it out. And I feel like the way she does it is such a breath of fresh air, especially her books, especially because they're like the perfect balance between everything that's going down and how these characters are actually working towards fixing it, rather than bringing up certain stupid third act conflicts. And I feel like the way she does her characters, they're all so in love and so made for each other, and they're perfect. And so this to me is again perfect. Please pick it up if you can. If you don't want to, I would understand, because it mostly takes place over summertime. But again, it's perfect in my head because during Christmas time, during winter time, especially towards the end of December, once Christmas is over, you kind of start looking forward to summer again, and there's no better book than this one to kind of put you in that mood. And so here we are, perfect cover too. So like, what more could you ask for? Lastly, I have the Chestnut Spring series in terms of romance, because this, again, if you haven't already heard of it, is like a cowboy romance series. and there's like a bunch of tropes in it or whatever with each book. This one, Flawless, the first one, follows a bull rider and his assistant or whatever. This one, the second, is Single Dad and Nanny. This is childhood best friends to lovers. It's so sweet. This one, oh my god, I love it so much. I cannot stop thinking about it. I can't wait for my reread because I think it's like accidental pregnancy, but I feel like it's done so well in this one specifically because I've never read anything like it, and it was 5 stars. And the last one is kind of like fake engagement or whatever, and they're also sweet because they follow these 3 brothers and they're 2 like best friends and stuff in their own small town, kind of finding their own love stories and stuff. And it's all sweet because there's found family and these connections, and like it takes place all throughout the year, not one specific season, but they're so cozy and comforting to read. And to me, they're like the perfect books, which is why I'd recommend them for this season if you haven't already read them, and if you have, reread them. So here we are. These are also perfect in my opinion, which is why I'm talking about them. But now moving on to the next genre, which is mystery books. Now here I have only a few, but the ones that I do have are bangers because starting off strong, I have this book called Bad Men. Essentially, it follows this woman called Safi, and she's like a socialite, and she does all these like good things in society, so no one really thinks a lot of her because she's obviously supposed to be like a dumb woman, except because no one thinks a lot of her, and because she's not on anyone's radar, she has this thing wherein she kills off bad men. Essentially why the title is so. So because no one suspects it, she's a serial killer in her own free time and stuff, and she goes about kind of ridding the world and freeing it of all these bad people. And what she does is kind of justified because I support women's wrongs, and she's clearly... she's not in the wrong, she's kind of in the right, but at the same time it's morally grey, so here we are. But essentially she has that hobby of hers which she does on the side, and now recently she started listening to this podcast and falling in love with like the host and stuff, except the host, Jonathan, he's now been accused of being a killer as well because a body was found outside his doorstep and stuff. So now she's trying to figure out how to clear his name and stuff, and how to get him to fall in love with her, because it's very stalkery but it's sweet, and it's a good book overall. But I feel like it's definitely cool in terms of like thriller sense because a lot of shit happens in this book that you would not expect, and because she's a serial killer, and I feel like that just adds to it all. So it's a fun one. It's really funny at bits because the way she thinks, truly so unapologetic, and I love it and I'm here for it, which is why this is on the recommendations list. Next up we have No Exit by Taylor Adams. I remember I was reading this as one of the last books I read last year on the way back from this like trip or whatever, and the funniest part is it was a road trip. This also takes place over the span of a road trip, and so because it was December time when I was getting back, it was all like frozen, and the way this book also made me feel is crazy because I was matching stuff that was happening in this book to my immediate surroundings and getting freaked the shit out, because essentially this follows this college kid called Darby. She's going back home to kind of see her mom over Christmas break. Again, there's nothing specifically Christmas, but it's set during winter time, and so she's driving home, except as it turns out she should have left like sooner and stuff because it starts downpouring, and then before she knows it, there's like a whole thunderstorm, roads are getting blocked out, and she just cannot drive in front of her any longer because the snowstorm is kind of blocking her vision and the car is stalling and stuff. And so she figures she'll take a break just for the night and then move on the next day or whatever when the roads are clear or whatever, because she doesn't want to risk being in bad weather. And so she pulls into this like rest stop and stuff. She figures she'll be fine, just park the car, go in, hang out for a few hours, except there's no cell reception, and the vehicle parked next to hers is a van. And when she looks inside, in the very back, when the light like flickers in this like one direction and you can actually see what's going down behind, there's a dog cage, and inside that there's a little girl that's trapped, kind of trying to rescue herself, and Darby is shook. So when she goes into the rest stop, as it turns out, obviously the van must be belonging to one of the few people that's over there, and she needs to figure out how she gets that girl out alive, but also kind of gets that person away from all the other good people in the rest stop, because she doesn't want to risk anyone's lives, but she needs to save that girl and figure out what's actually going down and kind of not injure and risk herself in the first place as well. So it's a great book overall. The twists in this are so crazy because there's always something going down, and this will keep you on your toes. And if you want to get freaked out over the season, this is great, because when I was reading it on my own road trip and we were stopping at rest stops, when I tell you I was so freaked out the entire time, I've never been more paranoid. My anxiety has never been higher through the roof, and this was perfect to make me feel that way. So this is a good one. Next up, we have this book called First Lie Wins. Essentially, this book follows the perfect southern girl, Evie Porter. She's got all her business in order. She's got a great boyfriend who she's probably going to marry at some point. She lives in a great neighborhood. She's like considering moving in with him and stuff. They're all happy in love. It's all great. Except Evie does not exist because the girl who is acting to be Evie and whatnot. She's actually a secret spy agent, I guess you can call her, who's been put into that mission by her boss and whatnot to figure out what's actually going down with deals and stuff. But because she botched her previous mission or whatever, the boss is now out to get her. And so this girl, Evie Potter, her real name is Luca Marino, but because the boss has now got a vendetta against her, he sends someone else who is not Luca Marino, because this girl is Luca, to pretend to be Luca and kind of take her original identity away, and suddenly there's like a lot of shit going down. I don't really know how to explain it without like stumbling, because there's a lot that happens in this book, but essentially her boss is watching all her moves. One mistake and she's dead. She doesn't know how to go about what happens next, and it's a crazy one, especially the leads and turns it takes or whatever, because it was again very unexpected, and the way it had me on the edge of my seat and on the tips of my toes. There's nothing like it. This is one of the best mystery books I've ever read, and I'd highly recommend. Now, this one, Run, was the first book I gave 5 stars this year. It's one of Blake Crouch's like older books, but it was like republished and I saw it in the bookstore. It caught my eye. I read it on Kindle, but then had to get a physical because it's perfect. And essentially it follows this like family. It's not the end of the world per se, but people are losing their minds wherein they're like coming out on the street and killing each other. So the family, they're kind of tuned into the radio station because all the power and everything else is out, and the presidents just ask everyone to kind of stay inside because they don't know what's really going down. But it's kind of like this pandemic that's driving everyone nuts, and so this family is alright, they aren't the contaminated ones, but as they are at home kind of listening to the radio, listening to a bunch of names being called out, because these names will be the ones that the contaminated crazy people will now come out to kind of hit down and kind of kill. The father of the family, I think his name was Jack or something like that, his name is called out, and suddenly they all have to run because there's like a bunch of people behind them, and like the world is coming to an end, so they need to figure out how they're going to survive and what they're going to do next. And it's crazy because it's like apocalyptic, but it's also survival, and it's done so well. And at the very end, tell me why I was crying. I don't even understand why, but I'd say about 1 chapter before the epilogue, or like 2 chapters or something like that, when this one thing happens and stuff, and you don't really expect a happy ending for certain characters, I lost it. It was so good, and I didn't really know how hard I connected until I reached the very end, but I binged this in a couple days and had the best time ever. So here we are. This was great, and also a good one to read this season. Now for some fantasy books, the first one I have on this list is called The Book of Doors. Essentially, it follows this girl called Cassie, and she kind of gets this book in this library or whatever because there's this old man who actually passes away as she's working there, and so as his body is taken away, he leaves behind this one book that she ends up taking home because she doesn't really know what to do with it. It's more like a notebook per se, but when she opens it up and she kind of moves through one door to the space outside or whatever, as she's holding on to the book, the location kind of changes. So it's actually the Book of Doors that kind of helps her transport from one place to another as she's holding it and walking through a door and kind of thinking of where she wants to end up next. Except this is a magical book, and there's like book hunters out there who are looking specifically for this book because they collect a bunch of other magical books and they want to add this to their collection, and suddenly she and her roommates' lives could be in danger because they own this, and so she needs to be really smart with what she does next and how she kind of moves about with it. And so it's like a fantasy book in that magical realism aspect, but also it's kind of like a survival one again, because one wrong move and they could literally kill her and take the book and just kind of end the world too because they're evil. So I feel like it's a good one to read overall. It's really fast paced. I don't even know where all of this flew by, but I finished it in a couple days and had the best time ever. Next up we have Ninth House. Now I read this last year for the first time as one of the first fantasy books I ever read, and I was very iffy about it in the moment because it's definitely something that takes more time to build up and develop, but once you actually truly get into the story and kind of figure out the ending plot twist, it's crazy, it's wild, and now I want to reread because it's perfect for this time of the year. Essentially, it follows Alex Stern. She kind of has this job as part of the Ninth House wherein she has to monitor all the other secret societies of Yale and all the magic they're performing, except one day this like dead body turns up and suddenly she doesn't know which house to link it back to and what to do next and how to figure out who's behind it all, because it could continue and it could come back to haunt her and stuff, and there's like a bunch of other stuff going down, and this one's really truly great. I do believe the third book in this like series, I think it's gonna be a trilogy, comes out next year, and I'm so excited because this was such a good one. The second one, it isn't so great in my opinion because like it didn't have a lot of direction, but this one specifically is so good that I needed a copy, and now I can't wait to go back because the way this shit takes the craziest turns you wouldn't expect ever is so wild, and it's the best time ever. So here we are. This woman can also see ghosts and stuff. Anyone who's dead, she can see them and why they died and stuff, and that kind of haunts her brain. So that is also going down, and it's a fun premise to explore. Now we have some fantasy classics, because this video would be incomplete if I didn't mention them. But basically I have the Akatar series. I do have the next book in it, but because I haven't read it, I'm only showing the ones I've read. But essentially this follows Feyre. She's kind of like a huntress, kind of trying to figure out how her family can survive through the winter, because they don't have any like food and stuff. And so she goes hunting in the forest. She kills this like one huge ass wolf. She's wondering how it's so big, but she kills it regardless because she needs the food and the hide to kind of sell it out and make money off of it so they can survive the cold. Except as it turns out, she accidentally killed off a member of the Fey court without not realizing it, and she just thought it was like a wolf. But now the Fae have this vendetta against her because she took the life of one of their own. She needs to forfeit her own life to the Fae realms and be taken over there, and so she has no option but to go along, because otherwise her family's lives could be in danger. And so she goes, but the Fae lands, as it turns out, have this like curse on them, and suddenly she could be the only way of kind of lifting the curse, and she needs to figure out what's actually going down in those Fae lands, because if she doesn't stop it, she could die, it could spread to the human lands, her family could die, and she's trying to figure out what else is going down. And this is so good. I feel like you just have to bear through the first one, but then once you get to the second book, best series ever, god tier book. I'm so obsessed with this. I've already read it a second time and can't wait to read it for a third time before I jump into the next book in the series, because these had me on the edge of my seat. Wouldn't have guessed the turns it took, but the way it goes out and the way it made me feel is unmatched. It's also the first fantasy book I've read getting back into reading, and so I am biased towards it for good reason, but these are really good books and you should read them if you haven't already. Last one on the fantasy list, we have another classic and more widely known one, but I feel like I had to recommend because this video would be incomplete without it. This one's called Fourth Wing. We follow this girl called Violet in it, and her mom is kind of part of like the military and stuff, except Violet has been training her entire life to be a scribe. Except as it turns out, the mom is not okay with that idea, because on conscription day, when they're supposed to decide what occupation they want to follow and kind of study as part of Basgayat College, it's like a war college almost, her mom kind of enforces a degree that forces Violet to kind of be part of the Riders Quadrant, the most deadly one out there, despite the fact that she's never trained not a single day in her life, just because of her mom's own like, I don't want to call it ego, but at the same time I've only read the first book in the series and that's what it feels like. And so Violet is kind of thrown into the most deadliest place in that college, and the people over there kind of hate her mother, who is the army general or something like that, because she was part of killing off the rebellion warriors, and their children have also been forcefully conscripted to this like board or whatever, and so they kind of hate her and would kind of kill her off only because of the fact that her mom is her mom and stuff. And so she needs to figure out how to kind of survive all these attacks, and also kind of figure out how to survive in this like quadrant and kind of learn to live there by herself and escape all these dangers, but also make like alliances and stuff. And I feel like this is so good and so adrenaline rushing, because there's no book like it. There's like crazy shit happening every other page. There's all these like challenges that she needs to go through, and she needs to bond with dragons and stuff, and like it's crazy and it's so good. And then the turns it takes and the kind of way it pushes off or whatever, I'm sorry, I was in tears because we lost our favorite character, or my favorite character in this, but the way I was so connected to this book and I enjoyed every second, again, has to be studied because this is perfect. Again, please read it this season if you haven't already. But yeah, if there's one book you have to go and read in 2025 if you haven't, it's this one, because it's so good and worth all the hype it gets. Because again, the fantasy is crazy, the whole like world and whatnot. Honestly, it's almost dystopian, you can call it, but it's done so well. And then the romance is between her and like a third year, I think, Rider Quadrant guy. He's called Zayden, and he's almost the enemy or whatever, and they kind of hate each other. And so the way that goes is also really fun, because he's a commanding like officer under their own like section and stuff. And so it's really sweet. It's not cute, but at the same time, in my head, once they're actually falling in love, it is. So here we are. I can't wait to continue the series in the new year, and until then, I will go obsess over this one, because I've also read this a couple times already and would recommend it to everyone. But now moving on to the last couple books I have for this recommendation video. This is for the last genre as well, literary fiction. We have the first one in this, which is called What You're Looking For Is in the Library. I don't know why, but a couple days ago, I just honestly had this like urge that gripped me in such a chokehold to go back and reread this, because I read it a year ago and I thought it was alright, but apparently the impact of it hit me so much harder. But essentially this is like one big book except it's divided into like 5 shorter stories that kind of follow all these people whose lives are, I wouldn't necessarily say in shambles, but they aren't living the happiest version of the life they could live, and they end up going to the library to like borrow a book, and the librarian kind of helps them with the book she gives them to find purpose in their life again and find meaning in their life again. And I feel like if you want one book that'll get you productive, especially for 2026, this is it, because the way this made me feel so amazing about myself for like the next week or whatnot, and the way it also brought back such intense feelings. I feel like reading is meant for books like this, because the way this is done is truly perfect in my opinion. I had the best time with it, and I feel like every single short story has like a message behind it that you could incorporate into your own life if you wanted, and it's so sweet because now I can't wait to go back and read all of them, because they're wholesome in the way that they help all these people, but they're also helping you in a way, and it's done perfectly. I do believe the author has like another book coming out or already came out this year, so I can't wait to get to their backlist too, and I feel like again we'll have the best time, but until then I'll go back and reread this because this is perfect to me. And I feel like there was this one quote in this book I remember specifically that says every book you like read almost feels like your own, which is why you recommend it, and so that perfectly describes how I feel like, which is why I love it. And here we are, one of the best ones ever, and also a really fun literary fiction, because literary fiction is not boring if you find the right ones. Now for the last book I have for this video. This I again read a couple years ago. I think this was one of the first books I gave 5 stars going into my reading journey again, and this is called Lessons in Chemistry. It's a literary fiction, and I feel like this time of the year is really fun to read like these high-powered, not intellectual, but like almost smarter reads, and I feel like this definitely feels like it, because you follow this woman in the 1960s. Her name is Elizabeth, and she's kind of working to almost prove herself in this like man-driven world, because she's like her first in her own category as a female scientist, and so they don't really expect a lot from her, but the way she's like changing their own expectations and worldview of her and kind of getting all these achievements and accomplishments that women in her time and era wouldn't necessarily dream of, and she's like building a future for women. I feel like this is done so incredibly well, and this is like one of my favorite books I've ever read because of what it captures. Follow 2 timelines, and while this was in the past timeline, in the I guess present timeline or whatever, she's now a single mom, and she also has to figure out how she's gonna make a living for herself and her daughter to kind of raise her and give her the best life. And so she kind of starts appearing on this like TV show trying to show women all across the country how you can combine chemistry into cooking and kind of empower yourselves, which is why this whole TV screen is there. And so it's a really fun one. I feel like the way, again, the turns this one takes, it got me emotional, it got me teary for these characters, but also so happy at the very end, the way they got everything they should have got from the first place or whatnot. And you have to check triggers if you have to read this, because it gets sad and deep for these characters in the sense that this is the 1960s. I don't understand why, but certain things were normalized back then that shouldn't have been, and so there's like injustices happening against her specifically and other things going down which are not okay. And so your mental health comes first, which is why you should check triggers. But it's a great book overall if you want to read it, because I feel like I have never connected harder to a character, and I again think about this one every single day because I'm so obsessed with it. There's no book like this in this world that I've been able to read again since I read this the past couple years ago, which is why here we are. I'm still looking for one, but until then I'll go back and reread this. I'll go watch the show that came out again a couple years ago that I didn't get to yet for some reason, but until then this is the perfect book, and I feel like it's also the perfect one to conclude this vlog on because it's such an incredible read, and this is the last rec I have for you. So now hopefully you got at least one cool book recommendation out of this long video. I don't really know how I'm gonna go edit it because it needs to be posted tonight, but I'm gonna go run and do that now, and probably grab a drink of water as well because I've been yapping for so long, which is why I'm hoping you're not bored of me yet. But regardless, these were all my book recommendations for you. There were so many, and there were some in every single genre, so hopefully you were able to find something you might like from this video. And if you've got your own recommendations to give me, definitely leave them in the comments. But these are some of my favorite books to kind of get to during this time of the year specifically, so hopefully they end up being your favorites too, because it feels like a universal book club that we're all part of, sharing the love of reading together. And the way they excite me, hopefully they give that joy to someone else too this holiday season. So now that we've reached the end of this vlog, hopefully you guys had a fun time coming along with me with these recommendations. And if you did, like, comment, share, subscribe. YouTube things, you know how to do them. And I'll see you in tomorrow's Bookmas video again very soon, because this is our routine for December. And so until then, take care, stay safe. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and bye, because I'm gonna go drink some water now. I'm so tired of yapping.